Ever feel like your whole career hinges on just one single moment?
Yeah.
Like, pass or fail, everything rides on it.
Yeah.
Well, that's MRCP PACES. Basically, it's not just about what you know. It's like, can you actually do doctoring?
Yeah.
Right there, on the spot. Practical skills, real patience, examiners watching every single thing you do.
Intense.
Oh, absolutely. Intense is an understatement, right?
Yeah.
But is it doable?
It is definitely doable. And today we're going to dive deep, not just how to pass, but how to really impress those examiners.
How to really knock their socks off.
Yeah.
Huge thanks to London Heartbeat Z Academy in the UK for giving us all the inside secrets of the PACES exam.
They are the real MVPs.
They are. And speaking of MVPs, our awesome listeners, you guys should follow them. Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube.
Free updates, fascinating discussions, all that good stuff.
Just like this one. You won't regret it.
What's really different about this exam, I think, is it makes you think on your feet. It's like you're thrown in the deep end, but instead of water, it's a complex medical case.
Oh, no floaties allowed in this pool. Okay, so let's break it down. What are you actually walking into? What are you facing?
Imagine like a carousel, but instead of horses, it's 5 stations, each one testing different skills. So you've got your classic physical exams like respiratory, abdominal, that's all one station. Then you've got cardiovascular and neurology, another station.
Cool.
Then there's history taking. That's all about getting the patient's story in a way that helps you figure out what's going on.
Almost like detective work, right?
Absolutely. And then there's communication skills and ethics, where you're dealing with sensitive situations. Maybe you have to break bad news or navigate some ethically tricky thing.
Stakes, high-stakes stuff.
And finally, you've got 2 brief clinical consultations. These are mini scenarios where you got to assess, diagnose, and manage a patient's problem, all in a short time.
Okay, so it's like a mini pressure cooker.
Yeah, designed to be real-world practice.
You got to be adaptable, ready for anything. Okay, before we get into each station, specifically, let's zoom out a bit. What's the, philosophy behind this whole MRCP thing anyway?
Basically, the MRCP is all about making sure physicians are competent, ethical, and, really committed to top-quality patient care.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the, what is it? The Hippocratic Oath in action.
Exactly. And those principles are reflected in the 8 core domains the exam assesses. So it's not just clinical skills. We're talking professionalism, communication, teamwork, even scholarship and management.
Wow. Okay. So it's like the whole package. You got to be a well-rounded doctor, not just a walking textbook.
Precisely. And that leads us to the specific skills they're looking at in the PACES exam.
Okay. Give it to us straight. What are they looking for?
The main thing is your ability to do a really thorough, systematic physical exam. You have to know what to look for, how to look for it, and then how to understand what you find.
So you can't just go through the motions. You have to show you get what those signs actually mean.
Exactly. Then there's clinical communication. That's all about talking to patients well, getting a good history from them, explaining things so they understand.
Almost like you're translating between doctor language and patient language.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Then there's differential diagnosis. This is where your detective work comes in.
Got to think of all the possible things it could be, right?
Exactly. And then, based on your differentials, you got to use clinical judgment to decide what to do.
This is where the real decision-making happens.
Yeah.
What tests to order, what treatments, how to deal with the patient's worries.
Yeah. And speaking of worries, the exam also looks at how you manage those anxieties and make sure the patient's okay.
So bedside manner matters.
Big time. You got to show you're compassionate, caring, not just a brilliant diagnostician.
Okay, so it's not just being smart, it's being a good doctor, the whole picture. So they're looking at everything, your skills, how you talk, your empathy, your ability to think critically. Wow.
It's a big assessment of are you ready to practice?
Okay, so we know what they want, but how do they actually judge all that? How is this exam fair? How do they make sure it's reliable?
Well, first off, you have 2 examiners at every station, and neither one specializes in what's being tested at that station.
Interesting. So if I'm doing a respiratory exam, the examiners might be cardiologists or neurologists.
Exactly. That helps make sure there's no bias. You're just being judged on your performance. And they use these standardized mark sheets, so everyone's evaluated the same way.
Okay, so they've really tried to make this objective. No funny business.
And before each exam, they calibrate the cases, so they make sure everyone's using the same standards when they're marking you.
Level playing field. No hidden advantages or disadvantages.
Exactly. And speaking of leveling the playing field, let's talk about passing. What does it take to get that pass on the MRCP PACES?
That is the million-dollar question.
To pass, you got to hit a minimum score on every single skill they're looking at, plus an overall minimum score for the whole exam.
So you can't just ace one station and coast. You got to be good across the board.
Exactly. But it's not just about hitting those minimums either. There are pitfalls, things that trip people up.
Oh, let's hear it. Knowledge is power,
Yep.
right? What not to do.
One common one is not passing one or more of the individual skills. Like, you might be amazing at exams, but terrible at communicating, or vice versa.
Gotcha.
And then there's the overall score. Even if you pass most skills individually, if your total's too low, you still fail.
Consistency is key. No major weaknesses allowed. Any other red flags the examiners are looking out for?
Low score on patient welfare is a biggie. Remember, being a good doctor, that matters just as much as clinical skills.
Yeah, if you're not treating the patient well with empathy and respect, that's a problem, no matter how good your diagnosis is.
Exactly. And if multiple examiners recommend counseling for a candidate, that's usually a sign something's wrong too.
Like, there are some fundamental issues that need addressing. So it's not just about passing the exam. It's about proving you've got the character, the temperament to be a doctor people can trust. Wow. Okay, we've covered a lot. The structure, the skills, how to pass, even what not to do. But now, the part everyone's waiting for. How do you actually prepare for this beast of an exam? Because it sounds daunting.
It can be, but with the right approach, it's totally doable, and prep is key. It starts with knowing what resources are out there.
Okay, let's talk resources. What should people be using to study for this thing?
Well, there are some great books, like the Oxford Specialty Training Series. Those are really good for building a solid foundation.
I've heard of those. Those are like the Bible for MRCP.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Then you've got pocket guides, specifically for PACES. Good for quick reference, when you need to review something fast.
So you can keep those in your coat pocket and study on the go.
Exactly. Then there are case books, which are great for practicing how you think clinically. You get a feel for the kinds of cases you might see on the exam.
Almost like a mock exam in a book.
That's a good way to think about it.
But it can't be all about books, right? Like, what about courses, videos? Are those helpful for PACES prep?
Courses can be really valuable. You get focused learning, hands-on skills training, and feedback from experienced clinicians.
Like having a coach to guide you through it.
Exactly. Videos can be good too, especially for visualizing how to do certain techniques, seeing how experienced doctors handle different cases.
So you can see the techniques in action.
And the best part, there's tons of free stuff online. PACES videos, podcasts, blog posts, it's all out there.
Okay, so there's no excuse not to be prepared. Resources galore.
Yeah.
But let's be real. Books, courses, videos, that's only part of it. How important is it to actually practice? Like, get out there with real patients.
Practice is absolutely essential. Every patient encounter you have, clinic, wards, even the ER, it's all a chance to learn.
So treat every interaction like a mini PACES station.
Exactly. And don't just go through the motions of the exam. Think about it. What's the underlying cause? What are my differentials? How would I manage this?
So you're constantly testing yourself, even when you're not in an exam setting.
Precisely. Here's another tip. Come up with a way to present cases and practice it out loud. Tell it to your colleagues, seniors, or even just yourself in the mirror.
Wait, why is saying it out loud so important? Can't you just, like, rehearse in your head?
When you say it out loud, it forces you to organize your thoughts, make them clear for someone else to understand. It also helps you remember better.
Like, the information sticks better when you actually say it.
Exactly. It's like you're teaching the material to yourself, and that's one of the best ways to learn.
That's fantastic advice. But we're just getting started. There's so much more to cover about how to conquer the MRCP PACES exam. We'll be back in a flash to go even deeper into how to tackle each station and give you even more tips for making this whole experience not just a challenge, but something you can actually conquer. Welcome back to our deep dive into the MRCP PACES exam. Before the break, we were talking about how crucial practice is for this exam, but let's be real, you're busy. You've got patients to see, research to do, maybe even a life outside of medicine, hopefully. So how do you make the most of your practice time?
It's all about being really intentional, like making every single patient encounter actually count. So instead of just going through the motions, try to approach it as if you were in the exam. Just ask yourself, what are the key things I'm seeing? What could this be? What are my differential diagnoses? How would I manage this particular patient?
So it's like you're turning your everyday work into training for the PACES exam.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to, talk to yourself.
Wait, what? Hold on. Before everyone thinks we've totally lost it, explain what you mean by talking to yourself.
I mean, Practice those case presentations, but out loud. Find a quiet spot or even just stand in front of a mirror and walk through a case from beginning to end. Like explain the history, the findings, your differentials, your plan, the whole thing.
So it's like you've got an imaginary examiner right there with you.
Exactly. Might feel a bit silly at first, but trust me, it makes a big difference. Speaking of making a difference, let's circle back to those resources we mentioned earlier. You know, the books, the courses, the videos.
Yeah, which ones are actually worth your time? Give us the inside scoop.
Well, the Oxford Specialty Training Series, that's a classic for a reason. It's comprehensive, it's well-written, covers everything you need for the MRCP.
That's like the gold standard for PACES prep, right?
Pretty much. But sometimes you need something a bit more, portable, something you can just quickly reference when you're on the go. That's where those PACES-specific pocket guides come in.
Those are like your little cheat sheets, full of essential information.
Exactly. And then to really test how you think clinically, nothing beats a good casebook.
Those are like practice exams disguised as a good read.
That's a great way to put it. They give you these realistic scenarios and make you think like an examiner would.
But reading about cases is one thing. Actually experiencing them is another. That's where the courses come in, right?
Yeah, courses can be a real game changer for PACES prep. They give you that structured learning, the hands-on training, and you get feedback from people who really know their stuff. Plus, you meet other candidates, which can be motivating.
Like a boot camp for your brain, getting you prepped for the big day.
And don't underestimate videos. They can be really helpful for actually seeing those exam techniques and how experienced clinicians approach different cases.
It's like having a front row seat to a masterclass in clinical examination.
And the best part, you don't have to spend a fortune to access good study materials. There's tons of free stuff, online videos, podcasts, blog posts, you name it.
You can pretty much create a whole study plan without spending a dime. Music to my ears. But with all these resources, it can be a bit overwhelming. Where do you recommend people even start?
First, just take a deep breath. Remember, this exam is doable. You've made it this far in med school, so you're already capable of learning and applying complex information.
Yeah, good reminder. We're all more capable than we think sometimes.
Absolutely. Next, create a study schedule that works for you. Don't try to cram everything in last minute.
Slow and steady wins the race, right?
Exactly. Consistency is key. And make sure you're actively learning, not just passively. Don't just read or watch. Actually do stuff. Practice those exam techniques. Present cases out loud. Test yourself.
So engage that brain. Don't just fill it up with information.
Precisely. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Talk to your colleagues, your seniors, your mentors. They've been through it. They can give you some great insights and support.
Like having a personal cheerleading squad rooting for you every step of the way.
Now, speaking of the big day, let's talk about those pre-exam jitters.
Okay, let's get into the mental game. How do you stay calm, cool, and collected when the pressure's on?
The most important thing is to remember you've prepared for this. You've put in the time, you've honed your skills, you know your stuff. Trust in that preparation.
Like tell that inner critic to take a hike and let your confidence shine.
Exactly. On the day of the exam, make sure you get a good night's sleep, eat a healthy breakfast, and arrive at the exam center early. No rushing around like a crazy person.
No last-minute cramming either.
Exactly. You want to walk in there feeling calm, collected, and ready to go. And once you're in that exam room, take a moment to center yourself. Take some deep breaths, focus on your breathing, and just remind yourself that you've got this.
Hit that pause button on those racing thoughts and just be present.
Now let's talk about some station-specific strategies. Starting with the clinical stations, respiratory and abdominal, cardiovascular and neurological, and those brief clinical consultations.
Okay, break it down for us. What are the key things to keep in mind for those clinical stations?
It's all about being systematic, thorough, and honest in your examination. The examiners aren't expecting you to be perfect. They want to see that you know how to approach a patient, how to do a good exam, and how to interpret your findings.
So it's not about trying to impress them with some fancy maneuver or like making up findings that aren't there.
Exactly. Honesty and integrity are super important. Be confident, but also be humble enough to admit when you're not sure about something. It's okay to say, I'm not sure about this, but I want to investigate it further.
So showing you're a safe and responsible clinician, putting patient safety first.
Absolutely. And when you're interacting with the patient, remember to be respectful, empathetic, and patient-centered. Make eye contact, really listen, and address any concerns they might have.
It's about treating the patient as a person, not just a case to solve.
Now, for Station 5, those brief clinical consultations, you're going to have to be even more adaptable and efficient.
I bet. Those scenarios are like mini pressure cookers. So much to do in such a short time.
That's why it's super important to practice those scenarios beforehand. Develop a system for quickly assessing the patient, getting the key information, and coming up with a management plan.
Like have a mental checklist that you can run through to make sure you're not missing anything important.
Exactly. And don't forget to communicate clearly and effectively with the patient. Explain what you're thinking, what you're going to do, and why.
So you're not just doing things to the patient, you're doing them with the patient as a partner in their care.
Now let's switch gears and talk about the history-taking station. This one's all about your ability to get information, build rapport with the patient, and come up with a differential diagnosis.
So it's like being a detective and a therapist all rolled into one.
That's a good way to put it. What are some key tips for acing this station?
Yeah, give us the secrets.
First, be structured in how you approach the patient. Start with open-ended questions to get them talking, then narrow down your focus as you get more information.
Okay, so start broad, then zoom in.
Exactly, and actively listen. Pay attention to both their words and their body language.
So you're not just hearing what they say, you're watching how they say it.
Precisely. Nonverbal cues can be just as important as what they're actually saying. And as you're getting information, start thinking about those differentials. What are the possible explanations for what they're experiencing?
Like a detective, piecing together those clues.
Once you've got a good understanding of their history and your differentials, you can move on to the management plan. What tests would you order? What treatment options would you consider?
So you're not just identifying the problem, you're figuring out how to solve it.
Exactly. And remember, they're not just looking for the right answer. They want to see how you think.
So it's okay to be wrong as long as you can explain your reasoning clearly.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to the communication skills station. This one can be tough for some people because it often deals with sensitive and emotionally charged situations.
I can imagine. It's one thing to talk about medical concepts with colleagues. It's another to break bad news to a patient or their family.
That's why it's so important to practice these scenarios. Find a colleague, a friend, even a family member, and role-play these difficult conversations.
Get comfortable with those tough conversations in a safe environment.
Exactly. And remember, they're not looking for perfection here. They want to see empathy, professionalism, and good communication skills.
So being human, not just a doctor.
Now, for those brief clinical consultations in Station 5, efficiency is key. You have to be adaptable.
Those scenarios can feel like a whirlwind. Information overload, decisions to make, all in a short amount of time.
That's why it's so important to have a system. Start by quickly assessing the patient, focusing on the main problem, then gather the key information, figure out your differentials, and come up with a plan.
Like a mental roadmap to keep you on track.
Exactly. And throughout the whole interaction, communicate clearly and concisely with the patient. Explain what you're thinking, what you're doing, and why.
Bringing the patient along on the journey, making them feel like an active participant in their care.
Now, we've covered a lot today, from the philosophy of the PACES exam to strategies for each station. But before we wrap up, let's talk about self-care.
Yes, the mental and emotional toll of exam prep. It's not just about studying, it's about taking care of yourself so you can be your best on exam day.
Exactly. Make sure you're sleeping enough, eating healthy foods, and doing things you enjoy that help you de-stress.
It's not about deprivation, it's about balance, hard work, and self-care.
Absolutely. And remember, you're not alone in this. Reach out to your support network, family, friends, colleagues, mentors. Let them know what you're going through. They can give you encouragement, perspective, a listening ear.
This has been an incredible deep dive into the MRCP PACES exam. We've learned about the structure, the skills, the strategies, but I think the biggest takeaway is this. Believe in yourself. You've got this.
Couldn't agree more. Trust in your preparation, stay focused, and remember why you started this journey in the first place.
We'll be back in a jiffy to wrap things up with some final thoughts and encouragement. Don't go anywhere. And we are back for the final part of our MRCP PACES deep dive.
Home stretch.
Yeah, we've covered so much already, like every little detail of each station, big picture strategies, how to think about the whole thing.
Right.
But now I kind of want to talk about something that honestly gets overlooked a lot when people are prepping for exams.
Yeah, what's that?
The mental game.
Oh, absolutely. That's huge. It's not just what, it's how you handle the pressure, right?
Yeah.
The uncertainty, how intense this whole experience is.
Totally. So how do you, cultivate that?
Yeah.
That unshakable confidence, that inner steel, that keeps you focused, keeps you performing your best, even when the stakes are this high?
I think it starts with believing in yourself, honestly.
Yeah.
Like really trusting all the work you've put in, all that prep, the skills you've built, remembering why you chose this path, what makes you passionate about medicine, and letting that fuel you.
It's like, tap into that fire, you know? That drive that got you through med school, all those late nights studying.
Exactly. And don't forget, you're not alone in this. Reach out to people, your family, friends, colleagues, mentors. They can give you so much support.
It's like having your own cheerleading squad, reminding you that you can do this. Okay, so it's exam day. You've gotten a good night's sleep.
All right, crucial.
You got a healthy breakfast. You're at the exam center early. No last-minute cramming. No rushing.
No need for that.
You're in the exam room. You've taken a few deep breaths. You're centered. What are like some last-minute tips for those moments right before you face the examiners?
Honestly, remember they're human too.
Yeah.
They're not trying to trick you. They want to see you succeed. They want you to show them what, your skills, your compassion, the things that make a great doctor.
So walk into each station with confidence, but also just a genuine desire to connect, both with the patient and the examiners.
Yeah, be present. And even if you stumble, even if you make a mistake, don't let it derail you. Take a breath, regroup, keep going. This is just one step on the road,
Right. It's not the end of the world, but it is a big milestone. You can absolutely do this.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up completely, I want to leave you with this. The PACES exam, yeah, it's hard, but it's also a chance to grow.
I like that.
It pushes you, makes you refine your skills, solidify your knowledge. So embrace the challenge, learn from it, and come out the other side a stronger, more confident doctor.
Beautifully said. To all our listeners prepping for this, you are capable, you are prepared, and you are worthy of being here. Believe in yourself, trust your gut, go out there and crush it.
I second that. You got this.
A huge thank you once again to London Heartbeat Z Academy in the UK. They gave us all this incredible material for our deep dive.
Yeah, they're doing great work.
Truly champions of medical education, making a real difference for all these aspiring doctors. And to our amazing listeners, remember to subscribe to London Heartbeat Z Academy on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube.
Stay up to date on all the latest, yeah.
You won't want to miss their insights, tips, all that good stuff. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, keep diving deep into the world of medicine. We're out.